Hey folks, Malforian here and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a bit of a discussion video and it is going to be regarding what you see on your screen at the moment, a post on the Crusader Kings subreddit about gold and debt mechanics in Crusader Kings 3. I was reading this today and I thought it was really interesting, so I thought it'd be a good video for us to have a little discussion in the comments down below. And as always, I will leave a link to this in the description as well. So if you want to go onto Reddit, give it an upvote, tell them Malforian sent you, obviously. Give this a bit of an upvote if you like it. I think it's a pretty cool idea, but we're just going to get straight into it and just, see what he has to say and see whether we agree or not. So we are going to do the TLDRs. Negative gold is crazy. Going under 0 gold should not be possible. The game should introduce a debt mechanic to track who you owe debt to. Debt will cause you trouble, but you should still be able to fund your armies while owing money to your vassal, liege, soldiers, etc., which is going to be something he's going to talk about later, like who you owe money to, as they will go into having like minus 500 gold. Say if you lose a war that you started and you have to pay that big amount of gold to the person that beat you, it is a bit annoying that you then have to potentially wait 10 years to pay off that debt, or just hope your character dies, basically, so you can get back into positive money, so then you could do some more wars or do something useful. We've all been in those situations like that, and I think this is a good way to get around that. So, as I say here, they are aiming to discuss the current representation of gold in CK3 and propose ideas to add more depth to the system whilst maintaining simplicity and enjoyable gameplay. And then just saying, obviously, being in debt and how gold works, they wanted to have a look like how the mechanics generally work, and as I say, they will talk about that as we carry on going. Gold in CK3 is rather basic, quite arbitrary, and a bit of a weird representation of what money actually is. However, they feel it could be made a little bit more detailed, but keep that kind of simplicity, but not too simple. They kind of want to make the gold system more interesting, but not where it just gets really finicky and weird to do, and they don't want to collapse how the economy generally works. And I would agree with this. I think the economy in general kind of works quite well in CK3. It's not the focus of the game, and I don't think it ever really should be the focus of the game. It shouldn't be like Victoria 3, but I do think the economy should be a good part of CK3, but it really shouldn't be something that you have to focus on too much. I think the dynasty building and things like that is where the game, and the RPG side of it is where the game should kind of stay focused on. In CK3, it is usually armies guzzling your cash and events that tank your cash stack. I would agree with that. It is generally having your armies raised too much, or you just have an unlucky event or something that takes away a lot of your money, leaving you basically incapable of doing anything. That is one of the problems I would agree with. I do find it not weird, and I guess kind of historically it's correct. If you don't have any money, you can't declare any wars in CK3, and you can't do anything else. If you're running out of money, you can't hire mercenaries and say, look, here's some money, come help fight for me. And I guess, historically they might look at you and go, well, you've got no money, so I'm not going to do it. But maybe you could say to them yeah, they've attacked me, come join me. If we win this, he's going to give me a bunch of money, so then I can pay for you. And yeah, that's a kind of risky situation to be in. But I'm sure historically there's situations where that's happened. That kind of mechanic would be interesting in the game. I think so as well. I kind of agree with most of the points he's going to talk about here. And then as they'll go into this paragraph here, this is just kind of commenting what I was talking about before. Having 0 money and then having to basically get to positive money to do pretty much anything is kind of overly punishing in a game where a lot of people see it as a map painter. As I've said before in previous videos, I don't see the game as a map painter. I think it is a role-playing game that has map painter elements and dynasty elements especially, obviously. But yeah, basically if you go into debt, you can't do basically anything in the game. Or there's very few things you can do when you have negative money. There are some events where you can weirdly do stuff that you wouldn't usually be able to do otherwise, but for the most part, yep, if you have debt, you're basically doing nothing. And then as they'll go on to here, questions that were raised. Who am I? God Emperor Heisteen of India? I'm sure we've all done that campaign. Move Heisteen to India, get some elephants, all that good stuff. Owing money to in the year 901, a bank, Jewish moneylenders, the Indo-Norse Church. Always down for the Indo-Norse Church. My vassals, my soldiers, different rich cities dotted around my vast empire. How can I have negative money? How can I physically hold in my hand a gold coin that disappears when I put another gold coin next to it? And I've never thought about it that way, but as I said in the intro, that is kind of how it works. It's kind of oh, I've got a gold coin, and then it just vanishes. In a ledger, it just goes, yeah, you've got 0 money still, but I've taken that gold coin you had in your hand and it's just gone now. It's just disappeared. It's why can I not incur endless debts and decide not to pay my debts and risk the chance of having a 10th century equivalent of the debt collection agency coming to my court to demand I pay my debtors? a cool idea? Why can I not just do tyrannic actions to absolve my debt by throwing people out of my realm, throwing people into my dungeons, or just using several hooks I have acquired on different people who I could owe money to? Is it not a cutthroat world? Again, I would agree with this, and all these points they're kind of calling out here, they're going to answer in some way down below, and we're going to get straight into that. To their questions, they have proposals, and they are the following. Separate gold from debt, and for debt to have its own value. This would mean that your gold could never go below 0. You're either penniless, or you're not. Debt would have a value, which would exist next to gold, and it would show you how much gold you owe and to whom it was owed. These 2 points, I think, make sense. Again, like, how can you have less than 0 gold? I guess in theory we all have credit cards and things like that, so I guess that's kind of how the game kind of pits it to you. It says like you've basically spent money you don't have and you need to pay that back before you can do anything else, but that's not really how things work in real life either. And then debt as a value is a good idea. You know, you have 5 gold, but you've got 1,000 debt, and you've basically got to pay it down. One thing this would be cool for, and would have some cool mechanics around, is because at the moment, when you die, it generally clears your debt, because obviously the person who had the debt is dead, and your son inherits, or your daughter does, and they don't have that debt, so it's all good. Now, with how this could work is, that isn't the case. If you owe money, why would the people that you owe it to just go, oh, well, he's dead. Yeah, but there's a new King of England. Yeah, but it was the old King of England that owed us all that money, so it doesn't really matter anymore, does it? Well, we'll just go on our business and just ignore the fact that he just took 1,000 gold just before he died and spent it all, and then he's dead, so it doesn't really matter anymore. So this would be an interesting thing. You could have that debt carry on down your dynasty and have to pay back in some way before you could, have 0 debt, basically. So what is this debt thing? Honestly, he doesn't know how it would look in the game. Fair enough, he's not making the game, it's just some good ideas. Here are some thoughts on how you could deal with it, and this is how they're going to kind of go into how the mechanic could generally work. So debt could be owed to your vassals or other rulers. This could be cool, if you have a merchant republic close by, if you're in Italy and you have the Republic of Venice there and you've got not much money, you could maybe go to Venice and say, hey, could you give me some money? Maybe I'll give you a hook. Maybe I'll give you someone to marry from my family, or maybe you do something. Maybe you say, look, I'll help you in a war that you start, but, give me some money now, and then you have to pay that back later on. Your armies, both levies and men-at-arms, maybe you don't pay them wages, maybe you don't let your soldiers loot whilst you're raiding or something like that. You just take all the money for yourself, but they're obviously like, yeah, I wanted some of that money, and you're like, yeah, okay, I'll give you it back, but later. I need it now. Maybe even the peasants of your county. That one I'm not too sure about. I don't think you could go around as a king, or even as a count, and say, yo, Bob, can you give me some money? And he'd go, I haven't got no money. I'm just here making wheat, and I give it all to you. Thank you very much, so leave me alone. Although I guess maybe you could use like the cities within your realm could give you money, maybe. That could be like an internal way of doing it, I guess. Debt should be absolvable, though, in many ways. And this is the really interesting one. This is really the thing that after I read, I thought, I'll make a video and we can have a discussion about it on the channel. So paying the debt in gold, which is obviously how it works now, basically. Giving out land or titles. So maybe, as I said, for that Venice one, maybe they say, yeah, we'll give you 500 gold, but I want this part of Italy if you don't pay me the money back in X amount of time. And then you would have that thing of like, okay, well, I'll take the money now. I think I can get the money back in, say, 10 years. But if I don't, I basically transfer this land to Venice and they take the land and there's nothing I can do about it. That would be really cool. I think that'd be an awesome thing. I don't know how the AI would work for that. It's not the smartest at the best of times for those kind of deals. So it would be interesting to see how that worked. But I'm sure there's a way they could do it. Promising marriages or alliances would make sense. Again, maybe you're in England, you want to go to war with Scotland. Maybe the old alliance isn't so strong, and you go to France and say, look, can I have some money? I want to invade Scotland. And they go, sure, but I want to marry your first son, or something like that. Would be a pretty cool mechanic. Negotiating with the person you owe the debt to absolve it. Maybe you owe your brother an elite amount of gold, but he loves you, so he just lets it slide. That doesn't sound like Crusader Kings, does it? But maybe if he's generous, he says, look, I'll knock like 20% off, or something like that after a couple of years. He goes, look, I kind of want the money, but I'm a generous kind of guy, so I'll knock you some money off. But maybe if he's greedy, he says, okay, an extra 20% because you haven't paid me the money back, and I want that money back in the end. Thank you very much. Paying off your soldiers' wages by letting them loot. Then we'll click the spoiler. More than they usually get to loot. So I guess you would destroy development maybe in a county if you looted it more or something like that. Again, could be quite interesting to see how that worked, kind of like a super version of raiding. Strong arming the person you owe gold to, making them absolve you by blackmail or while he's in your dungeon, or if you're really far into the intrigue tree. You could see this working this way. As we've seen recently with like the red weddings and things like that, there are things locked into the end of that tree that no one else can use. So it could be a cool way. You know, if you owe a lot of money to a duke, you take him prisoner or you blackmail him and say, look, I'll let you out of the dungeon if you say I don't owe you all that money. And he can either agree or disagree. Get somebody else to declare your debt null, void, or invalid. Your liege or head of faith absolves the debt. No money changes hands. I mean, we already milk the Pope for money already, but maybe you could go to the Pope and say, look, the King of France, I borrowed all that money off him to attack Scotland, and I just don't fancy paying him, and you don't really like him that much, so why don't you tell him that I don't owe him that money, or he'll go to hell? And the Pope just goes and does that, and thank you very much, and the King of France will hate you, get some crazy modifier, but at the end of the day, the Pope said it's fine, so who is he to, you know, go against the Pope? The person you owe gold to declares war on you, loot your possessions, and then considers the matter closed. This one I'm not too sure about. I think it would be cool maybe if you had a set date you had to pay it back by, and you didn't do it, and then you like refused further to do anything about it. Maybe he could then get a casus belli and just comes and just raids your land. Basically like a super raid. Just raids your lands, maybe takes the gold, and then some extra gold, maybe double the amount that you owe him to really make it punishable for just not paying people back. It would be interesting to see how this would work in practice, but it would be a cool one. Ways to avoid negative impacts of debt. High dread. With dread high enough, the people are terrified of you. You know, you have all this debt, but at the end of the day, if people really, really are scared of you, are they really going to come knocking and cause you trouble? Probably not. Or tyranny, I am the king. While making everyone hate you, you keep your realm running, and that's all that matters at the end of the day, which is very true as well. So I think either of those would be quite cool. It would give another little bonus to having high dread or high tyranny. There are some obviously bonuses at the moment, especially dread, you know, it stops factions and things like that, but having another bonus for that, if you have a lot of debt, get those high enough, they maybe won't come after you, or maybe they do have to have that higher threshold before they come after you. It would be an interesting way of doing it to try avoid paying those debts. And then obviously, you know, they might just kill you and then come after your son if it did work where your son inherits your debts, which I think would make sense. And then as they say here, well, that's kind of how this system would roughly work. But the big question is, of course, how would you actually get into debt? How would you have this debt? Personally, they don't like the introduction of 15th century banking into a situation taking place in the 9th century. Instead of golden interest rates, maybe hooks can be bargained and then later leveraged. So, yeah, they basically don't want it to work kind of like, you know, EU4, where you can just take loans out and then pay them back. This obviously isn't really how it worked in the CK3 timeframe. It obviously did in some places in the world, but generally not really how it worked. So how would you do it instead? And I think this really hooks into, ironically, what we were talking about earlier, about you would maybe go to another person that has a lot of money and say, I will give you a hook on me. I will give you a child of my lineage. I will give you this land if I don't pay you back. I think that would work quite well. I don't think you should have like a central place. Like in CK2, you could always just get the money from expelling the Jews and then letting them back in. You had to pay them the money back, basically. That was kind of basically like having a bank. I wouldn't want it like that. I don't think you should be able to just press a button and just get some money and then, okay, yeah, I'll pay you it back later on. I don't think that's really how it should work. It would be a lot more interesting, those ways we've talked about earlier, giving land, children, or something like that as the collateral for the loan, and then kind of playing it out from there. Cash for hooks, that does sound familiar, yes, because there is a perk that allows you to sell a hook for money. That could be a way of basically doing it. Excessive spending, holding extravagant feasts, building magnificent palaces, and waging wars should all be levying some kind of debt to someone, or at least someone seeing you having a low cash reserve during a war or even peacetime would offer you money in exchange for hooks, titles, or eventual repayment. Now, this part of it, I think, would have to be balanced in some way. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I think it is a bit weird where, like, if you're just short of money, you can't start the building of a building or, you know, do a feast or a wedding or something like that. But how you could balance it so you couldn't just always do them. I don't think you should be able to just hold endless feasts or just carry on building up your lands if you don't have money and just build up these debt stacks, because you could do that at the beginning to gain a long-term benefit. I guess depending on what you have to give away to get that money, I think it would be a bit overpowered if you could just do it too much. Maybe you could only do a certain percentage of your income or something, or your overall kind of value of your land some way. Maybe the total development of your land gets converted into some kind of matrix that says how much money you can borrow up to. Because I don't think it'd be good for just people to just endlessly lend you money. I don't think that would really make sense. Let me know what you think, as I said, but I think there should be some kind of limit on it. You know, if you're 10 gold short of doing a feast, you should really be able to do that feast and go into debt and then be able to pay it back. I think it's a bit weird that sometimes it's really arbitrary. Like, you could be 5 gold short of something and it's just like, nah, you can't do that. You're like, okay, but I make like 5 gold a month, so I'll be able to pay back really quick. I guess it's, you know, waiting a month isn't that bad, but I think you get what they're trying to say here. It's a bit silly that when you go to debt, you basically can't do anything. So I think I would agree with them, as they're kind of pointing out here, that once you go into debt, it is a bit weird that a lot of the game kind of gets locked away from you until you get back into plus money. And you can kind of spiral into this bit where you never have money if you're unlucky, which can make for interesting playthroughs. I'm not saying that's overall a bad thing, but it would be cool if there was some way you could still spend money whilst you're in debt, or at least declare war if you have no money, with some kind of penalty. Maybe you get less levies if you declare war and you have less money because your levies don't trust that you can pay them or something like that. It would be an interesting way of doing it. And then another question, don't your armies automatically keep getting paid? Well, yes, in CK3, armies automatically drain your cash mana. However, it would be an option as to whether you pay your army or not. And then, as they say in the brackets here, this is a weird thing of like opening up the can of worms about how they would work. You know, would you have them kind of like in EU4, where if you don't fully pay your army, they're worse at fighting? They have less, basically, morale at fighting. I wouldn't want to bring that mechanic over. I never really liked that in EU4. Would they loot maybe and you couldn't stop them? Or maybe would they work, I've mentioned this before, like Imperator Rome, where generals could basically take their army and do whatever they wanted if they didn't like you enough. They'd just wander off. Sometimes they'd still help you on your campaigns, but sometimes they'd just wander off and just hide in another country, and there's nothing you could do about it. Maybe that's how you could do it. You know, I'm going to pay you less money, I'm going to risk it, but maybe they would desert, maybe they would go join a faction and just boost their numbers, and then they could declare the faction against you. That would be a pretty cool thing, actually, if there was a faction like install somebody else, and you were at war and not paying your army. Maybe the army would be like, yeah, do you know what? I'm going to join that faction, get rid of you, because maybe Jeff 2 over here would pay us the money we're owed, so we're going to risk it with him. Thank you very much. I'm pretty down for that, depending on obviously how it was implemented. It would give another kind of look on how armies work as well, because you couldn't just raise them up and they're always there, and they're pretty static how they act, whereas if they could be affected by not paying them properly, or saying, look, I've got no money now, I'll pay you later, maybe they wouldn't trust you. Maybe the person in charge of them, if he's greedy, he goes, nah, I want the money now. Or if he's generous, he's like, yeah, okay, we'll wait, but we'll get some money later on. Devious or something like that. Maybe he says yes, but then he actually just backstabs you and takes his army and switches sides or something like that. That would be an interesting way of how the armies would work. I think more historically accurate for that kind of Imperator Rome time frame. But let me know what you think. I'm sure there's times in history where in the medieval times armies have switched sides because they weren't paid and things like that. I just can't think of any off the top of my head, but I'm sure it's happened. And then that's basically it. They go into a little bit more stuff here, but as they even say, it kind of tails off at the end. So, you know, no offense to them, but kind of correct. He put all his good ideas in this beginning bit, if we're being honest. And yeah, there we have it. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. As I said, I'll put a link to it in the description as well, so you can go upvote it, talk about it, tell them that Malforian sent you again, and yeah, let me know what you think. Like, I think this is a cool idea. I've never thought about it before, but one way to kind of change how the economy works is to have that gold and debt. It would have to obviously be balanced quite well. That's why I kind of think this won't come to the game, because I think there's too much stuff that would need fine-tuning to such an extent that I don't think they'll ever do it for CK3. I think it works better in a way, in the kind of simplicity, as they mentioned, of how it works now. You don't really have to worry about it. Yeah, you can focus on your economy. You can just make sure you invest in the right things, and that helps you later on and things like that. So, you know, it does work enough, I think, how it is now, but a system like this, or even like a slimmed down version of this, even if they just brought in the bit where you can get money from other rulers, maybe people in your alliance, or maybe even not, maybe just random other rulers that like you, you know, being able to go to them and say, look, I see you've got 1,000 gold. Can I have 500 of it? And you can marry my second son, or I'll give you this land if I don't pay you back, or something along those lines. I think something as simple as that would be another cool little mechanic to bring into the game. Maybe when we get that trade update, that Merchant Republic update in the far future, and by that I mean probably next year, I would think so, then I think something like this would be cool. Even just a little part of it, like I said, would make it a bit more interesting, and I'm sure you could flesh it out. I'm sure you guys will have comments of, oh, it'd be cool if this would happen instead. So as I said, let me know. But we're going to leave it there for today. Like I said, just a bit of a discussion video. There's no dev diaries at the moment, but I kind of thought this would be an interesting topic to discuss. As always, if you've enjoyed the video today, hit that like button. If you're new here, I cover Crusader Kings. I do narrative campaigns, achievement runs. At the moment, we're just doing the Rise of the Gurids on the channel. I cover the dev diaries, news, discussion videos, and I play other historical titles on the channel as well. But we're going to leave it there for today, and I'll see you in the next one.